Naam, ni furaha huko na sherehe zinazoendelea katika ama zilizokuwepo katika kaunti ya Embu baada ya viongozi walioshinda kutangazwa rasmi na maafisa wa IEBC katika kaunti hiyo. Bila shaka mojawapo akiwa ni gavana ambaye amechaguliwa hivi sasa, Bi Cecily Mbarire, ambaye anachukua hatamu ya uongozi kutoka kwa gavana wa kwanza ambaye mbali na misukosuko aliweza kumaliza muhula wake wa kwanza na muhula wake wa pili. Na tukiwa tunazungumzia hili swala la kumaliza mihula, tumeangalia kwamba katika jinsi matokeo yalivyo hivi sasa katika baadhi ya kaunti, magavana ambao walikuwepo muhula wa kwanza wakaondolewa mwaka 2017 wamerejea. Mojawapo kama kaunti ya Bungoma, Speaker wa Senate Ken Lusaka, katika kaunti ya Baringo Benjamin Cheboi. Hii inamaanisha nini kuhusiana na wapiga kura katika baadhi ya maeneo haya? Ni kwamba waliona kuwa yule alikuwa na maono, wacha tumrudishe, au ni ukosefu wa watu wa kuongoza? Tuanze na wewe Warungu.
Ni mara ya kwanza tunaona historia inakuwa iko unfaithful to ile tunasema science, kwa sababu ile science tulikuwa tumefanya na zile pattern tulikuwa tumeonelea kama kutakuwa na wale ex-governors kurudi. But pia ile inajitokeza la muhimu ni kuangalia zile vitu probably zilituma governors waweze kutolewa ile tunasema 2017. Probably vitu kama ile tunasema wave, vitu kama kuwa kwa political parties, vitu nyingi. So zinaonekana hizo vitu zinaenda zikiendelea. Na mwenzangu alikuwa amesema tukua mapumziko kuwa probably we need to do a study of the Kenyan citizen. Uliona nilimention vitu na the software of our politics. Yale madhanio yetu kwa siasa na mwananchi. Na inaonekana mwananchi anachoshwa sana na ule mtu anaitwa gavana. Ukiangalia wenye wameweza kurudi the second term ni wachache sana. Na wengi walikuwa wanaweza kusurvive sala wakuwa wale tunasema MPs. Ukiangalia mtu kama mheshimiwa Kiraitu Mulungi amesurvive sana kuwa MP, but imekuwa shida sana, matatizo kubwa sana kurudi kama gavana kwa sababu ya mambo mawili muhimu. One, ile area of representation, ama tunasema area ya jurisdiction of representation, inakuwa kubwa kuliko ile ya MP. Second, ilikuwa wananchi wanaweza kusikia gavana anapewa hela nyingi, na wanajaribu kuangalia kule kwa ground mambo yanayotendeka visavi yale mabilioni ya pesa yanayoletwa. So unapata mwananchi anatosheka sana, ama anakuwa anamalizana sana haraka na gavana kuliko wale ma MPs.
Sijui kama Ruth bado yuko nasi ama Victoria.
Bado niko.
She's still in. Naam, Ruth bila shaka bado yuko nasi. Tueleze kuhusiana na hili swala la magavana waliohudumu muhula wa kwanza kuondolewa mwaka 2017 na sasa wamerejea. Je, unadhani ni nini ambacho kimesababisha masuala haya?
Asante kwa hiyo swali. Nikiangalia, I think la kwanza ni wengi wao walifanya kitu kinaitwa learning the lessons from the previous election. Wakiangalia labda kama swala la agents ndio iliwaangusha chini, ama kama kuna propaganda ambayo iliwaangusha chini, wamejaribu labda kujua vile ambavyo wanaweza kusuluhisha hii ndio isiwasumbue tena wakisimama. La pili, inaweza kuwa kwa sababu ukiangalia areas mingi isipokuwa tu gavana peke yake, pia kwa wabunge kuna wengi ambao wamerudi. Walikuwa wameondolewa 2017 na 2013 walikuwepo. Kwa sasa hivi tena wamerudi. Ni kwa sababu unapata saa zingine wanasema ule ambaye alikuja baada ya mwenzake hakukuwa anafanya vile tulikuwa tunataka, kama vile tulikuwa tunatarajia kama wapiga kura. Kwa hivyo unapata akirejea tunasema ili tunakupeleka tunakurudisha kwa kukuambia pole, kwa sababu kama wapiga kura tumeona makosa yetu na kwa kweli tumeteseka, kwa hivyo tunaona tukurudishe ufanye vile ambavyo ulifanya. Kuna county ambaye gavana wao wa kwanza aliweza kuhakikisha kuwa wako na dawa za kutosha kila hospitali. Hawakuwa na shida ya kupata dawa, hawakuwa na shida ya stima, kwa hivyo hata madawa ama zile shindano ambaye walikuwa wanahitaji kuweka kwa certain storage facilities ulipata walikuwa wanaweza kufanya hivyo. Sio lazima wasafiri muda mrefu ili wapate hospitali ama kituo cha afya mzuri. Kwa hivyo unapata huyo gavana anapoondoka na wapili anakuja, unajua kama gavana unakuja na structure yako, unakuja na manifesto yako, unakuja na watu wako tofauti, unapata kidogo inakuwa ngumu kuendelea hiyo kazi. Kama wapiga kura tunaangalia tunaona afadhali ule wa kwanza. Kwa hivyo huyo akirudi inakuwa rahisi sana kumpeleka. Lakini pia ya tatu, kuna ukosefu wa watu. Ukiangalia zile pesa ambazo tulikuwa tunaongelea kuhusu, sio mwananchi wa kawaida ambaye anaweza pata 40 billion. Sio mwananchi wa kawaida ambaye anaweza pata hata 45 million. Kwa hivyo nikikaa chini na niangalie kweli ninaweza uza sera. Niko na watu ambao wanaweza kuja kunisaidia kujenga hii county. Ninapenda watu wa hii county yetu, lakini sina hilo hela. Unapata ninakaa chini nasema wacha niende kiti ingine ya chini ambaye ninaweza kuafford, ama hata nisiende kiti yoyote. Na pia nikiguzia kidogo kwa swala ambaye mlikuwa mmeguzia earlier on kuhusu Mount Kenya na vile round hii hawajaweza kuchagua watu wengi kutoka Jubilee. Tutakubaliana kwamba kwa swala ya running mate kila mtu alikuwa anaangalia tunaweza pata aje mtu kutoka Mount Kenya. Hata wacha na wale ambao walichaguliwa, huyo ni Martha Karua upande wa Azimio na Rigathi Gachagua upande wa Kenya Kwanza. Wale wengine ambao walikuwa considered, wengi wao walikuwa kutoka Mount Kenya. Kusema kwamba ni kweli hiyo factor la kupata mtu wa hiyo area ni important sana. Kwa nini hawangeweza kaa chini kusema wacha tutafute Mgiriama ama wacha tutafute Mpokot? Kwa nini wote wawili walikuwa wanasema lazima tutafute mtu kutoka Mount Kenya? Ni kwa sababu bado akili zetu kama wapiga kura inasema lazima tupate mtu wetu, mtu wa kutoka ukabila yetu, badala ya kuangalia huyu ni mtu aina gani, huyu mtu amefanya nini kwa kwa ile muda ambaye tumemjua. Kwa hivyo hivi ndio vitu unaweza pata zinafanya labda wale magavana ambao walikuwa 2013 na 2017 wakakosa, wamerudi raundi kwa sababu ya hizo vitu tatu. La kwanza ni hiyo watu ku regret, ya pili ni hiyo ku learn lesson, na ya tatu labda ni hiyo ukosefu wa watu.
I think I'd probably add and say that, first of all, these governors were coming in office for the very first time because our new constitution was promulgated in 2010. Mm-hmm. So you're coming to a new office that has been set up, and it takes time to even understand your mandate, fit in, know how to execute and implement your mandate as as a new governor. That is one, and we've seen how 5 years can easily fly by, and citizens also feeling like you actually did not deliver, And so that is one. But also, if you look at them, they have a little bit of an advantage because even when you leave office, at least you've been able to amass a bit of resources that can still make you visible even when you've left office, right? As opposed to maybe a candidate who did not win and they're still struggling with making themselves visible. So even when you lose, you understand the strategies, you've already built networks, so you can even fundraise and still continue to be visible by implementing and doing activities and connecting with the citizens, right? So that is one that gives you an advantage. And also, because you've actually occupied that office before, then you're able to exploit some of the loopholes and take advantage of that in terms of campaigning against someone who's actually in office. So by the time you're campaigning, because now you have a clearer understanding of what this office entails and what the current and the incumbent has not done that they ought to have done. So when you go back to the citizens to campaign, you're like, let me tell you guys, I've occupied this office before. This is what ought to have been done. You deserve this. These are your rights. These are the resources you are entitled to. These are the policies this incumbent should have actually made to ensure that the interventions improve your life. So you're able to take advantage of that, capitalize on that, plus the visibility and the resources and the networks you had amassed by the mere fact that you had occupied that office before. So that gives you an advantage already.
Okay. No. Warongo, then this raises the important question of whether Kenyans understand the devolved system of governance, because we had conceptualized the idea under the Constitution in 2010. And it meant to devolve resources and power to some extent from the national government to the counties. And do Kenyans understand the importance that a governor's office hold in terms of development and improving their living standards and also their economic well-being?
I think the biggest question could be, do Kenyans understand the various political units, may it be the Senate, the women rep, the role of the president, the role of the presidency, being a pair, the devolved unit, the governor. I think in my own assessment, Kenya seems not to understand the various political units, more so the devolved system. They don't know the role of the governor. They don't know how much the governor holds in terms of the power, how much money is devolved to the county, so much so that when now we come to the election time, you are able to do your own assessment. If a county is given 5 billion annually in a span of 5 years, that county will have received 25 billion. Then you are able to assess and see with the development that we have been given to Mashinani, is it equal to these 25 billion? If another county is receiving 12 billion, it totals to 60 billion. Yale mambo yameweza kufanywa mabarabara. Kuna wale magavana wamekuwa wakifanya ile tunasema populist politics, mnaletewa fertilizer, mnaletewa zile mbegu za kupanda, mnaletewa ng'ombe ama zile vitu zingine. Are they equal to the amount of the money that you are given? Secondly, lazima Wakenya pia waweze kuelewa kuwa zile counties zinaweza collect ushuru. Ile ushuru na ile pesa wanapewa la serikali inaendaje, so that even we need to educate Kenya so that ikikuja ni wakati wa kuchaguana, they're able to use those parameters. There are two constant things in politics. One, the interest, and the second one, the betrayal. The interest comes first before the betrayal. Inakuwa ni ile interest ya ki-ideolojia, inakuwa ni interest kama ile ya Uhuru na Ruto 2013 tunaenda kufungwa pamoja. So it's either we are hunted together or separately. Na ukiangazia maneno yote, mwanasiasa wakati anakuja kwako anaangalia interest ya power from a personal perspective na ile public perspective na kukuletea vitu. So lazima mwananchi aweze kuelimishwa, ndio pia mwananchi aweze kuweka caveat ya interest kwake kwa kiongozi wake wakati wanasainiana ile tunasema social agreement ama ile mkataba. Tunasema wakati unaweza kuchagua kiongozi wako, unasaini ile social contract ama mkataba ya kati yako na mwenye atakuongoza kwa miaka 5.
Okay. You know, it's interesting. Ruth, let me bring you in here. I hope you can hear me. I was just listening to Warungu running off the various positions that Kenyans have access to, president all the way to MCA, and the sheer over-representation that we have in this country that does not translate to a better livelihood. You know, where is the disconnect? If you have an MCA at the lowest level, an MP, and then you have a woman rep, you have a senator, you have a governor, and we haven't even touched the national level yet. But you kind of see this perpetual cycle of Kenyans complaining that nothing much has changed in terms of service delivery. There's things, there's funds, there's initiatives that are available to them, but it never shows in terms of their daily life. Why is that disconnect still present? Even as Ayub was talking about, that trickle-down effect that devolution was supposed to achieve at the counties.
You know, my colleague has just rephrased the question and said, do Kenyans understand all, you know, the various positions that are there in the Constitution? My question should actually be, do they understand the Constitution? Because as you say, a Constitution that was passed in 2010 up to now, you find that we don't know, we don't understand the various, not just the various responsibilities of the elected leaders. If you look at even the nominated positions, for example, in 2013, they didn't have as much interest. And so we had quite a number of old people, for lack of a better word, who went in as nominated because the young people were not, you know, they didn't understand how much power or the kind of platform that it gives. If you look at 2017, now we began understanding some of these roles, and that's why you see the numbers increased. Now look at 2022. Now a number of you know, the elected leaders or the elites then understood that, okay, so these are the kind of responsibilities and this is the kind of power that each rank holds. And so it attracted even more numbers. But now the question is, the people who are supposed to be voting in those people, do they understand? And like I've always said, this year we experienced the lowest kind of voter sensitivity. The electorates did not know, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to look out for? And yes, maybe because we were really keen on ensuring that IEBC is, free, fair, and transparent, we are also really looking forward to preaching peace. But we're preaching peace without preaching justice, without preaching fairness, without ensuring that, our voters understand what they're actually going in to do. Because you're telling someone, vote for me, like we said earlier, the MCA is saying, vote for me, I will build a road. That is not the jurisdiction of an MCA, but we do not know that. I'll tell you, in some counties, and I'll use Homa Bay for example, when they go to Kisii for treatment, because of course the hospital there is better, you find that those in the Kisii hospital will begin to treat the Kisiis first. They'll begin to treat the residents there first. And this is a complaint that very many people have said. Even when they go to their own neighborhood in Kisumu, you find that once they're filling in the form, they actually have to fill in and say that they're a resident of Kisumu, even though they're not. Because they know, if not, they'll be told, but you also have devolution in your own county. You also receive funds in your own county. You also have a governor in your own county. Why are you coming to get the services that other people in this county should be getting? And we've had those cases, and unfortunately during COVID, it exposed just how much we are willing to hold on and to close off other people for the sake of our own. For the sake of our people in our own county, yet we're supposed to be serving everyone, which is understandable, because again, if you ask those in the medical fraternity, they will tell you that when our medical supplies get over and they're not able to access more, we are going to be asked, why were you treating people from this sector? If there was an accident in this border, why did you allow them to come and get treated here? And so I think, again, the buck stops and starts with the electorate. And we need to carry out voter sensitization for them to be able to understand that, number one, as I am voting in these people, I need to hold them accountable. That is the only way where devolution will work. We've heard of governors who sit under a tree and they ask you, so what kind of factory do you want? Okay. So they ask their consultants, is it possible? And they go ahead and do it. But the question then becomes, are we following it up with the necessary legal measures to ensure that even the next governor who comes in is not going to undo the progress that has already been done by the governor that was there before, by their predecessor? Are we also able to tell these electorates that yes, in as much as this elected leader has gone through, there is something on the newspaper that is going to call you to come for public participation, and you need to attend? Do they understand what public participation is and how heavy their presence is and their thoughts and suggestions go? So I think we need to go back, and actually this is where the media comes in. They need to start to tell the electorates, this is what is expected of you, and this is how you go about it, and this is what you do. So there is a disconnect, because there is really no one who is following up on our elected leaders, so they can do as they please. The only person who follows up most of the time is their party leaders. And where do they follow up? At the point of legislation. They will only want to find out, are you doing as we had agreed in Parliament or in Senate or in the governor's caucus? And so even if you look at the independent institutions that are actually supposed to put these elected leaders to task, look at EACC, for example. A number of times they will only come after you, either one, if you have found yourself on the wrong side of the president at the time, or the wrong, if you're in opposition, then they will come after you. And if you look at the only other time they'll come after our MCAs is if they were supposed to go for a trip, or they were supposed to do something, an activity, they have gotten the funds and it has not been done. But what happens to the other times? Look at most of our county assemblies. The only bills, the only engagement that they have is not of one that they have sponsored themselves. It is the normal one that whether or not they're sitting will still have to be passed at the end of the day.
Okay.
I think I just want to emphasize what my fellow panelist is saying, because, and just to give a small anecdote, is we actually at Badili Africa work with political mobilizers who organize in chamas, because majority of the time you find it's these women who go out of their way to actually do door-to-door, and you find that politicians capitalize on these networks. And I remember when we brought them together to even interrogate whether they understand this role, one of our very fierce political mobilizers said, mimi nakufa na you senator because I'm promised bursary for my kids. So mimi nitakufa na yeye. Those, like, that is actually, I'm saying it verbatim, okay? So you can imagine if this particular senator is promising rules that are even outside his own mandate when he occupies office, and taking advantage of this woman's lack of knowledge in terms of what his role is. Because at the end of the day, most of the politicians will make very, very grand promises, and they don't even tell you how they're going to implement those promises. And because you are not aware, then you are unable to have a quality conversation in terms of, oh, it's okay, I'm glad you're talking about these grand plans, but now that this is outside your mandate, how do you plan to implement it? How do you plan to finance this plan that is actually outside your mandate completely? But you're not able to ask that question or have a quality conversation because you actually do not know. So at the end of the day, you even win, not because you're the best candidate, but you win, quote unquote, because you know how to maybe lie better than another particular person. Like maybe Bina will come there and I'm trying to be honest and genuine. And you're thinking, but Bina is just talking about policies. Mimi skulangi policies. You know, that's the language kwa mtaa. Mimi skuli policies. But I'm trying to tell you, these are the policies you actually need to be able to access better healthcare in this community and in this particular county that we are in. So it's super important for us to start early when it comes to civic education, when it comes to political education, and also to challenge ourselves, because half the time we always look at the outsider. Oh, it's the role of the NGOs to do this. I think where we are at as a nation, it's the role of all of us. I always say this statement everywhere I go, that the most important office is not the office of the president, the governor, the MCA, the women rep. It's the office of the citizen. And we have to occupy our office. Mashrima achangamkie, ofisi yake kama mwananchi, platform zake. These are the roles. This is what you ought to do. All of us, where we are right now, we have to also contribute to saving this nation. Yeah.
Okay. Napo ukizungumzia masuala ya siasa za sera, nadhani wakati tulikuwa kwenye mapumziko, Warungu ulikuwa umetaja kwamba kuna tofauti kati ya siasa za sera na siasa za kauli ambazo huibua mihemko, ni populist statements, na kama alivyosema Bina kwamba ni vigumu kuuza siasa za sera. Je, kwa wengine utawezaje kuleta haya mambo mawili pamoja? Maana unaweza kuweka populist statements, lakini wakati huo huo unahakikisha kwamba unamuelewesha yule mpiga kura kuhusiana na zile sera ambazo utaziunda ili uweze kutekeleza haya masuala unayotaja.
Ni ukweli umemention kuwa kwa siasa sana unapata sera haziuzi sana. Si hata hapa nchini Kenya, hata ukiangalia kule Amerika. Kule Amerika walimchagua Donald Trump kwa sababu kwa zile vitu alikuwa anasema kuwafurusha watu wenye wameteka, alisema walikuwa wameteka nchi nyara. So unapata kuna hiyo populism. I think la muhimu lazima tukue na zile, kama itakuwa dunia imeamua imeenda zile populist politics, ikuwe zile populist politics zikuwe ni long term. Kwa sababu shida kubwa sana ile populist politics nyingi zinakuanga ni zile short term, na shida populist politics zimeungana na vitu tunaita propaganda na zile tunasema gimmick. Ili unapata mnaletoa zile suluhu za muda, hazidumu sana. Second, unapata Wakenya ni kuwa hawezi kucontextualize zile tunasema policy. Unajenga barabara, ukiangalia kama ile express highway, ukiwa juu unaona ni kama uko Dubai, but Mkenya atakuuliza yeye analala njaa. So Mkenya mwanzo anaangalia ile yeye kushiba na nini. Ibra. So unapata mwanasiasa atasema ndio niweze kusecure ama kucapture state power, wacha nikushibishe yenye ni populist na nisiweze kukujengea yale mabarabara ama ile infrastructure. Second, tukirudi kwa civic education, kuna tatizo kubwa sana na Wakenya in terms of how they contextualize this heavy discussion. Saizi ukiamua kuwe kwa kituo cha Citizen Radio ama Citizen TV ukuwe na ile legal discussion na ukuwe na ile discussion ya sensation on marital issues, utapata ile ya marital issue inauza sana kuliko ile ya kisheria. Kwa wakati mmoja ni kwa one platform niliweza kufanya ile kufunza watu kisheria kama wakili. But kila wakati host alikuwa ananikumbusha tusiende sana, tufanye dakika 30 because watu wanaboeka sana. But ukifanya ile mdahalo kuhusu mapenzi, marital issues, unaona inauza sala kuliko ile tunasema maneno ya kwa sababu ikija likikatiba la kuelewa policies inakuwa sana ni maneno ya kisheria. So lazima pia Wakenya wachukue muito kuwa lazima wafunzwe, waweze kuelewa vitengo tofauti za kiserikali ama za kiutawala ama za kisiasa, ndio ikifika wakati wa kuchaguana wanaweza kumake ile waamuzi mwenye ni waamuzi mzuri.
Naam, Victoria.
Yeah, you know, I want to kind of keep on this theme. As much as we're talking about an active and engaged citizen, the voter turnout this election cycle was quite disappointing, even though voter turnout has been declining gradually over the last election cycles. Bina, when you look at the grassroots and what people are saying, what are some of the factors that contributed to people abstaining? It could be a protest saying, I'm just not going to vote because there are no leaders that inspire me to go to the ballot. Was it the hard economic times, for instance, where they felt, I need to vote without putting a ballot, you know, in that box? But what do you feel, and from what you've seen on the ground, are people saying was the reason that they just did not go to vote this time around? So first of all, when you talk about the low voter turnout, I think it's both ways, you know, like citizens in the community, but majorly the young people who make the bulk of the first-time voters who did not actually show up to vote. And when you look at the harsh economic times, unemployment, young people bear the brunt of it in this country. You have parents who still have their kids in the house after having struggled for such a long time to educate your kid, and they still can't even find a job. You know, in this country, we're talking about 800,000 students graduate every year. Those are young people. But the job market can only consume about 50,000, you know. So you're talking about every other year, approximately 1 million, you know, have nowhere to go in terms of accessing employment. And when we're even doing our civic education, and political education in communities, I think I was even trying to share earlier an example that really struck me of this woman who has 3 kids. One is 24, another one is 21, and another one is 18. And we were trying to talk to them about why it's important for them to show up and vote, why it's important for their voice to be heard. And they, in turn, asked a question. They said, you know, like this organization, my mom is also part of this organization. My mom has been a political mobilizer for a long time. For the past 15 years, she's been a political mobilizer. Politicians literally call her to, you know, for her to help them do door-to-door mobilization, to rally support of the community member. You know, her life has never changed. You know, we've struggled at times to even access food, access resources for education. You look at our home, we still struggle with decent housing. So how is my life going to change? You see, so the inability of seeing how the leadership of the day is going to transform their lives, that alone contributed to the apathy that we saw, and also not showing up at the ballot, because every new government comes with a plan. We even have, you know, the current government, when it comes to the Big Four agenda, yes. Were they able to achieve it? Yes, to some extent. You know, but then how does that translate to that young person who does not have a job? How does it translate to a nation that is literally starving? We're talking about food security. And we had statistics a short while ago on, I think was it 1 in 7 people actually cannot afford food. And then look at COVID-19. Yes. People are still trying to resurrect from the impact and the effect of COVID-19 when it comes to people who lost their jobs, when it comes to setting up new businesses, sustaining, you know, those businesses. And when you have leaders who've been on the same side of the coin, promising that they're going to change your life, and perhaps you have not seen them do much with the current positions they are holding, then it doesn't inspire hope. At the end of the day. And I think that was one of the major reasons why not only young people, but also other citizens just chose not to vote in this particular election. Okay. But then we have to explore other ways people are also engaging beyond the ballot. Okay.
And that points a picture of a rather stranglehold public who believe politicians for what they say and not seriously interrogating the actions. And let's get to Ruth Bolo. Ruth, I come to you on this because we have talked about the representation and people giving the mandate to a crop of leaders who exercise that authority over them, given a time frame in law, and that is after every 5 years Kenyans head to the ballot. But within the period that is provided for in law, then can Kenyans, I mean, what is the recourse mechanism in the event a member of parliament, a member of the National Assembly, may I say, the Senate of the bicameral house, a member of the county assembly, the governor underperforms or does not meet the expectation of the public? Where is the recall mechanism for them to be held to account?
Before I answer your question, allow me to touch on the voter turnout. I think there's an aspect that we are overlooking. Number one, we should have seen this when we were doing the voter registration. There was very, very poor voter registration this time round. I mean, worse than the previous years. And so we should have seen we should have, predicted this trend right from then. The second thing is that a number of the people that were voting in urban areas have shifted and gone to the rural areas. A number of those who are vying also in the rural areas have gone to the urban areas. And remember, and this is no secret, there has been a lot of voter transportation. So if I, for example, was vying for something in an urban area and I, transported about 1,000 people, because what normally happens is that I provide the transport for you to go to that particular constituency and vote. Now, this time around, I am not voting there. We also know how the economy has been. People do not have that 1,200 shillings to go back to Mashinani and vote. And so what happens is that there's nothing I can do because I do not have that money to move to where I am registered to go and vote. And so that also really, really contributed to the poor voter turnout, because a number of people were not able to access where they have been registered as voters. A number of people were also not able to check on their phones. The changes that I made when I went to Huduma Center and the various stations, but they are, affected. So you get that when you go to your polling station and you're ready to vote, you actually find that it has not changed as you had expected or as you had tried to. And so we need to make this easier. And finally, I have always asked, is our electoral process working for us as Kenyans? Is it comfortable for us, or is it a mechanism we have borrowed from elsewhere and we are forcing it to work? There's an African country, I think it's Gambia, if I'm not wrong, where they have actually gone to use, the local bids to vote, because that is what their electorates understand. That is what is comfortable for them. Kenyans are, for lack of a better word, we are a lazy lot. And so, again, as I had said earlier, for me, I stood in the line for 4 hours and I saw people leave that line. I don't know whether or not they came back. So are we able to effectively ensure that we can strengthen our electronic system such that I can vote from my phone, I can vote from my email, and trust that these systems are actually going to work and not be tampered with? Maybe then we are going to be able to see an increase in this. And to your question, yes, we have seen elected leaders who have underperformed. We have seen governors who have been, evicted. And unfortunately, a number of times this is due to political reasons. We have a number of governors, for example, who have underperformed, but because they're very active in the running of our political parties, or they're very active in, certain contributions to the coalitions or the political divide that we are aligned to, they are untouched. And so most of those who have actually their heads have actually been cut off because of these particular reasons. It has never been because they have only underperformed, and so as citizens we feel this should be done. No. Most of the time it has been because, well, you've been underperforming, but you've been keeping quiet because you're in our political divide. But right now it's time for you to go because you're no longer dancing to our tune. And so you find that in a number of the county assemblies, the only reason that they go ahead and actually task this governors to come and answer questions is if they have changed the tune to which they are dancing to. I know for members of parliament, I need to get the numbers right, but if you collect a number of signatures, then you can easily present it to IEBC and say, as constituents of Kasarani constituency, for example, we have decided that we would like to have another election because we feel that our leader is not working. We feel that he or she is not doing as expected. And so these mechanisms are there. But again, as electeds, we are not very keen. And by the time you're going to tell someone, give me your signature, I am telling you for sure, for free that they will ask you, where is that 50 shillings for me to actually append my signature and give you a copy of my ID? Again, because of the scams that have been there in the country, people do not trust you with their information, because for you to take to IEBC a document and tell them we need this and this to happen, you need to ascertain that these are individuals that actually exist. So you need documents like their ID numbers, their phone numbers, their signatures. So how many of them are actually willing to give this to you to make a difference in their lives? A number of them are going to think that maybe you're doing this for your own political gain. And so you also need to give them an amount. So there's a cost attached to almost each and every mechanism. Look at our county assemblies. For an MCA to actually go and vote towards a certain direction, a number of them are influenced. There is a cost attached to it again. So if we're able to do away with this cost and actually do these things, out of genuineness, then we are able to make a step. But even if the mechanisms are there and we are not genuine, then they're going to be just that, mechanisms. They're just going to be things that have been stipulated in our constitution, but they're not working for us. They're not implementable.
Okay.
I want to talk. Yeah, go ahead, Bina. No, I think I'll just briefly add this to also inspire hope and say that, the median age of a Kenyan citizen in this country is actually 19 years. 19 years. It means that as young people, we are inheriting the mess. And it takes a lot to disrupt the status quo, and we cannot afford to be bystanders. We cannot afford to say, okay, now what do I do, and to give up. How do we organize our ideas? How do we mobilize? You see, because at the end of the day, all factors constant, you're going to live longer with the decisions that are being made right now by the political class. Like I said, all factors constant, unless you die earlier, but all factors constant, you are going to bear the burden and live longer with those decisions that are being made by the current political class in this country. So the earlier we wake up, and if we realize even the challenges with the political parties, how then do we play an active role in those political parties to influence their programs, their plans, their policy, to speak to our needs at the end of the day? Because half the time, you find that the political class will look at the young people as a voting bloc. They'll approach you because they are seeing votes. They're not actually seeing anything beyond that. Mm-hmm. They're like, you know what? I need to speak their language so that I can actually get their votes. But then what next beyond the vote? And maybe that's why people feel like, after voting, then what next? So I think we can't afford to be bystanders in this country.
It's interesting, you mentioned the politicians would look at the youth as a voting bloc, speak their language, but the youth did not return the favor at the ballot this time around, which was very interesting. And I want to come to something that Ruth had talked about, this quote-unquote cost, right, which we translate to handouts on the campaign trail. And the belief that, if I facilitated these people to come to my campaign rally, this would then convert to votes. That was not the case. And just talk a bit about the danger of this transactional relationship that politician has with the electorate, and how, in terms, it can actually be the electorate or the voter giving up their agency to actually choose this individual. Just talk about the danger of the handout culture here.
I think, number one, it leads to exclusion when it comes to leaders who literally want to work. Because if you don't have that amount of resources to actually give out in handouts, then it means you're not even presenting yourself up for, a leadership position. That is one. But then number two is the fact that at the end of the day, if someone is giving this money, they have to recoup it somehow. Mm-hmm. And recouping this money, it means they are taking advantage and looting your public resources, your taxes, to pay back. Because, there's no one who just has this huge chunk of money just lying around and they're ready to just give it out for free without anything in return, That is the second thing. But then the third thing, it's the culture, Then how do you demand for better public service delivery if at the very beginning it was, just give me my part and then that's it. Tumalizane nipe yangu, na wewe nikupe yako, and then tumalizane. How then do you go back to actually have a conversation and demand better public service delivery? So it's hard to get there. We're talking about challenging corruption in this country. And I think it begins from those, those small levels, those small cities. I think, most of the time, maybe we're not even track it when it comes to the MCA or even to the chief. But it has to begin from all, like those small levels, being able to say, how do I embody the national values that we're talking about? I think my panelist Ruth did mention about understanding and living our constitution. When it comes to our national values, how do we embody that and give an opportunity to people who want to serve this country? Because at the end of the day, if you spend that amount of money, and the cost you're talking about, Victoria, if they said the minimum amount for you to be an MP is 18 million, 18 million. Minimum amount for you to be an MCA is 3 million. Yet we see majority of the young people wanting to occupy the MCA position. Where are you getting that 3 million? Okay. And if someone is financing you and giving you that 3 million, that means you're getting into an agreement with them. Like, if you get in there, this is what I need. If someone is financing you as a governor, like the cost, they're already negotiating and they want something at the end of the day. And that comes at the expense of service delivery. And that is why at times we see people rewarding loyalty over meritocracy. Yeah. And we've seen that a lot.
Yes, hold that thought, Bina. We'll come back to the conversation. We're crossing over to KICC?
Yes, and that's